medically understood.
Hey Ben,
Hey, how you doing?
I'm very excited, man.
I know, I
I'm
can hear it in your
incredibly
voice.
excited. So, you know what we're talking about tonight, Ben. It's my
Yeah,
favorite thing in the world and one of your least favorite things in the world. But tonight we are talking about the greatest sport ever created. And I bought myself a little tag team partner along. Not, I say little, I shouldn't have said that. He's in the room.
six
But
foot two. I've done my
let,
research.
let me do the introduction, if
Go on.
that's all right. So, hailing from Oban, Scotland, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this show is proud to present to you one half of the Highlanders, Robbie McAllister.
I'm Robbie.
Get in. We've got our first like international famous guest, and I couldn't be more pleased that it's you, Robbie. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I could not complain. My life has turned out unbelievable, pretty much because, uh, you know, as you know, Ben might not know unless he did a little bit of research. I got in a little trouble back in the day and might have been expelled from WWE and some other little things, and might have blacklisted me for a while. But uh, I might have did some bad things in my career, but in the end, being a real good person, the universe took care of me, and now I'm doing awesome.
That's wicked, man. That's wicked to
Fantastic.
hear. And you're out in Canada, yeah?
Yes, I live in. I just live outside Halifax, Canada. I'm about 45 minutes outside of the city, down on the South Shore, right by the ocean.
Nice, man. Well, we really, really appreciate you joining us
Yeah,
and
it's great
taking
to
this
have you here,
time.
man. I have a bit of a confession to make, actually. I understand that Rich has introduced this to you as um, you guys teaming up to defend wrestling. I'm going to have to flip that narrative a little bit because during my research, I got a little tinge of nostalgia, and I
Uh
really
oh.
I really enjoyed reading your profile, and I kind of started seeing a few old videos and things. And I did watch wrestling as a kid in the '90s. It just kind of fizzled out in my later teens and when I went to university. Rich never gave up the dream. On the other hand, into adulthood, he never. I mean, he still has a quite an impressive collection of. I call them dolls. He doesn't like it when I call them dolls.
Ben, can I cut you off?
Yeah,
Ben,
sure.
can I cut you off? Those are action figures.
Action figures. I beg your pardon. Action figures. But yeah, when I was a kid, I used to go to, I suppose you call it like grassroots wrestling events in caravan camps in the UK, and I used to see these kind of knockoff versions of the wrestlers like Bulk Logan, and I saw some good ones though. I think I saw Big Daddy back in the day, one of the early
Yep.
wrestlers. Yeah, Big Daddy. Um, but yeah, it just kind of brought it back to me. But I'm still ready to be convinced about the wrestling era post early '90s because it kind of fell off for me. So, Rich, maybe you can start off. Like, what's so wonderful about this sport that it's been a part of your life, all of your life?
Well, for me, man, and Robbie, jump in whenever you fancy. It's like the oldest, purest form of sport. You know, wrestling itself. If you go back to like the ancient Greeks and stuff like that, and it was just two guys having a ruck, wasn't it? You know, and then um, years later, uh, in sort of the carnival scene going around Middle America, the two guys sort of realised, oh, if we're going to beat the crap out of each other, we may as well not try and kill each other. Let's make it a work, if you will. That's pretty much how it went, isn't it, Robbie?
I would say, and those gentlemen, they did the best to keep what they we called kayfabe. So you kept the outside people out of the business, kind of like it's hard to keep the internet side out of the business today.
Mm.
Because you know, it's supposed to be a competition, and when people when an arena fills up, or a carnival fills up with people, they want to see a competition, so they make it look as real as possible, and you know, they kind of work the crowd a little too.
Mm.
There
And
has
the
to
other,
be showman. There has to be showmanship, or there wouldn't be the people wouldn't be that interested.
and that's it, isn't it? Some of those early matches, like Lou Fairs and even Pryor, they'd go like 2 hours sometimes. So it was what we'd call chain wrestling, and it was quite slow and not really exciting. And it wasn't until guys like Gorgeous George and other guys. Sorry, my dog's just walking in, and other guys started developing characters around it. But it it sort of, that showmanship element came in sort of the 50s, I believe, 50s and 60s, and then it developed into this big thing thanks to Ben's on picture duty. You won't be able to see it, Robbie, but I'll show you after. Thanks to the McMahon family. So, Vince Senior and Vince Junior were, well, Vince Senior certainly to start with, made it have some sort of mass appeal in the US. Yeah.
Well, I want to say, I would like to say that Vern Gagne also had a little piece of that in the Midwest, being that he had a lot of those characters before Vince McMahon, but they all kind of shared back in the day. So they all kind of had a vision of taking pro wrestling to bigger heights and more of a show. And then, of course, Vince McMahon really turned it into a show, and he when Ben would have watched it, early '90s and pre '90s, that's when I really really enjoyed it and was hooked and sucked in. And there was many years like Ben that I didn't actually watch it. And as I reflect on my life, it's a big part of my life because I do it today. I still love it. Um, I think I'm not so much about the athletic. I used to be more about the wrestling, but I guess it is more about the show.
Mm. And
There's some of those guys in the '90s. I remember especially the tag teams, Legion of Doom, like the Bushwhackers. The theatre of it for me as a teenager growing up, it was just awesome. But I kind of lost interest when the blood came back in. To be honest,
I'm not a big blood guy myself. I liked it was just in the late '90s or the late '80s and early '90s. Just the characters were so good that they didn't need any of that other stuff.
yeah, yeah.
They really, like, there were so many characters that you could be drawn into.
mm.
And their
Well,
storytelling was well, maybe it's because it was because of my age, but I felt like the storytelling was more believable. Whereas I don't know, I was Rich forced me to watch a documentary in preparation for our chat today. Vince McMahon, was it The 9 Lives of Vince McMahon? And
Okay.
yeah, wow. I have to say, like, the drama surrounding the life story of Vince McMahon is more dramatic than the wrestling itself. It was nuts. I couldn't believe like some of the stuff that was in that documentary.
I could imagine. I could imagine it. Like, I don't know. I'm in a different spot, but there's probably a lot of toxicity and everything. There's all kinds of
Mm.
craziness going on in that world.
mm. I think, Ben, I was trying to explain to you about the territories, wasn't I?
Yeah, yeah.
And how the whole of the US and Canada, of course, is broken up, and each sort of area had its own owner or its own version of Vince. So there was Stu Hart down in Canada, I guess, and then um, the Gagnes were AWA. Is that right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
Minneapolis around there. Um,
The Crockett's down south.
yeah,
There's also Memphis territory with Jerry Lawler.
yeah, yeah.
So there was a lot of different pockets.
And it wasn't really until Vince Senior sold it to Vince Junior that WWF, as it was then, took over, really, didn't they? And
Yeah, that they basically closed everybody out and became the only show until
yeah,
until Ted Turner came around and fed money to the NWA and then became World Championship Wrestling.
yeah. So, Robbie, I don't think me and you are too far apart in age. I guess we grew up watching similar guys. What were your early memories of it? I mean, is that
Um,
what got you into it, or was it a later in life thing? Or
I would say I watched it very young. Me and my friends, we used to wrestle on Saturdays after we watched it. There would be Roddy Piper. This is right around WrestleMania 1 with Roddy Piper, Mr. T. You know,
yeah,
bringing Mr. T into it was probably a real smart thing by Vince McMahon.
hmm
You know, because I want to say that was around while Hulk Hogan was in Rocky, and then Mr. T was in Rocky. So Vince really knew how to put things together to make money.
and who were some of your favorites then? Was it you know
I would say
me?
I would say Roddy Piper, Macho Man. I liked Tito Santana. Well, back then there was Rick Martel. Uh, let's see. Um, I never did like Hulk Hogan. I always wanted to see Hulk Hogan get beat.
Yeah, big.
Junkyard Dog was really awesome.
Oh yeah, he was cool, man.
Yeah.
Big guy and like
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was around then. Uh,
yeah.
he
Was
was
it?
he was a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time on the road with him too,
Was that
which
one
was
two
fun.
three kid era as well?
No, I was a
No.
bit later then.
Okay, I get confused.
Yeah,
These confused.
1, 2, 3 kid. I think that's more like 95, 96 when Raw probably started coming in.
Yeah.
When probably when you started to fade away from it then.
Yeah, yeah, I guess it was. Yeah, British
I mean, one
Bulldog.
thing. Yeah, we can't forget Bulldog, man. One thing I always found, Robbie, when I was because for people who don't know, I used to write the trading cards and the sticker books and things for tops, um, and we found it was a very sort of secular business. Wrestling goes through phases of popularity, and I think for us, I was collecting those cards around SummerSlam '92 when it came over to the UK, and I was lucky enough to be at SummerSlam '92 as a 12-year-old kid. I've told the story before. My dad dropped me off outside Wembley Stadium with
Wow.
£5 and a Mars bar, and said,
Wow.
"I'll see you after the show." At which point, I
Wow.
told him it was like 8 hour long show, But um, but it was massive in the UK then, and doing pretty well in the States still, I think. And then it went through a bit of a sort of dead period for a while until the later '90s.
Yeah, that's when basically Paul Heyman had ECW and World Championship Wrestling, and then it became good because there was competition. When there's no
Mm.
competition, wrestling gets terrible, and wrestling is really good right now because there is brands out there and there's a lot of places to work and make money.
What is the wrestling scene in 2023 like? What does it look like nowadays? How does it compare to those? I don't know if you would call them glory days, but those early days when people like myself have a kind of nostalgic recollection. I haven't seen any modern wrestling. I'll be perfectly honest. I have no idea what the scene's like nowadays.
Well, I don't watch it too much myself. I actually participate more because that's the end of wrestling that I really enjoy. Um, but I know it its its popularity is probably as big as it was because there's more people now and the internet era. Um, but it's just the business is just really exciting right now because there's other places to work and there's competition for Vince McMahon, even though there's a lot of crap talking on the internet about this guy and that guy and stuff. But the business is actually pretty exciting because there's competition and places to go work, and guys are jumping ship, and it kind of reminds me of the late '90s when it had a boom. I want to say it started to boom in '96, and probably right before I started in WWE, it tailed back down. When I was in from 2005 to 2008, I would say it had a really big lull, and right before AEW, the newest company, came on the scene 3 or 4 years ago, WWE was not a very good product either. But it gets better when there's competition, and that's why the product is good right now. I don't watch it a lot. I've seen some, but I know other people that watch it, and I respect their opinions that the product is getting so much better because there's so much more competition.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, that's how it was in the late '90s, wasn't it? When WCW was around. Ben, you like a bit of business. WCW was owned by a guy called Ted Turner, who's like like the Richard Murdoch of the US. He owned like every cable station, or the biggest ones, and he started off like selling advertising on radio, and realized that wrestling was like a fairly cheap product to put out at that time. All you needed was a ring with a light bulb and a couple of cameras, and you could produce a show for next to nothing. The guys weren't getting paid a fortune, especially down in WCW back then, I don't think. And it sort of built his TV stations, so he continued with it right up until the closure of WCW in 2002, I think, which was all in part to Turner's network being bought by, do you remember AOL? And AOL were like, wrestling's for losers, basically, and just didn't want it on their TV show, which is mad. Like, just the amount of money in it, when it's popular, it's insane, the amount of money.
Well, it's funny how popular it is right now that WWE is in talks with TBS and TNT to actually go put their product back on that network.
Yeah, when I guess
when they already have the other competition on their
network. When networks are coming to you, offering you money for the show, that's you've got to be doing something right.
Yeah,
Robbie, it's a bit of a cliche question, man, but how did you first get into the biz? Because it's not an easy thing to do nowadays, and I imagine it was even harder then, being from Oban, Scotland.
Okay, so being from Oban, Scotland, and getting over to Canada. So I started in a place called Cambridge, Ontario, and it was supposedly it was a subsidiary of the Hart Brothers School of Wrestling.
I've heard there's a lot of those, isn't there? Like,
yes.
I don't know how legit they all are.
But the thing was, one of the brothers of Brett was part of it, and then he had his, which I like to call stooge or scam artist, the salesman to get the kids in, and then they had an older wrestler that was well known back in the 60s. He was part of it, but when I went there, I could see the scam ahead, but all I saw was a ring, and I just kind of put my backbone up, and I just started training at this school, and then my tag team partner came over from Glasgow, Scotland, and we put the Highlanders together, and then we chose to leave and basically, go to other places to train and see where we could learn, and it wasn't easy because we had to tape VHS. We had to make VHS tapes and send them to promoters, and And back then it wasn't easy. The internet's so easy. Like someone talks about someone, the next thing you know, they're in WWE.
Yeah.
Because someone talked about them on the internet so much. And then they might turn out to flake out, or they might turn out to be a big star. It's so unbelievable now how easy it would probably be to get in. By all you have to do is, well, if you're a good gymnast and you can remember everything, uh, and you have good matches, you have put them on YouTube, and they go, people start talking about them. It's easy to get a job. I think it's so much easier today.
It's difficult to go viral on VHS for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Can I just ask you a question? Because Rich and myself are horrendously out of shape. Him more so than myself. But we've recently embarked on a fitness journey, and I was wondering what the training looks like in one of these Hart University of I can't remember the name that you gave it. These training camps. What kind of fitness routine do you go through to get into the shape you need to be in to do what you do?
Well, to be honest with you, this one, this school had a few weights, a wrestling ring, and there was not a lot being done there. But I know, and fortunately, I didn't have to go through it. But say the people that were in the WWE training camp when I went there, and they were in Florida, they were in Georgia. They had some grueling 500 squats before they got in the ring, and we're like Hindu squats aren't easy, and big guys, 6'5", 400 pounders doing squats, it's not easy, and I'm not gonna lie, I had it pretty easy. I I happen to go to the gym. I have a good workout regimen. I had a decent physique. I was in very good shape, and I was very fortunate to not. I wish maybe I had that more style of discipline training, that I had to do all that stuff, because I might have advanced my career a little farther with some discipline.
I suppose the Scottish genetics help as well. All of these,
Oh,
yeah, big dudes from Scotland. Some of the strongest men in the world, right? And this the Stoltman brothers, the powerlifters, come from Glasgow. Yeah, big guys.
there's a lot of big guys for big guys in the power in the world strongman stuff.
And just another question is not related in any way to wrestling, because I can't ask any questions about wrestling because I don't know anything about it. But
That's okay.
your tartan, is that does that represent a specific clan, or is that
The one that the very first one we used in WWE, basically, we ran across the kilt maker who had the tartan we used was called the Canadian Maple Leaf.
Nice.
And the reason he had a bunch of it, and the reason we actually went with it, was because, well, my family's last name is Graham, and my tag team partner's last name is Murray, and we can't wear each other's family's tartans, and so wearing a generic one, and it actually, the reason we went with it was because it actually looked old, and like when we first came out in WWE, we looked like from the 14th century.
Yeah.
And those colors the colors and the fur kind of look 14th century. So that's how that came about.
So Ben, when Robbie talks about that first promotion he worked for and stuff, like back in the day, guys didn't just appear on TV. It wasn't like nowadays. There's WWE have their own training school, and I think AEW have a few like feeder schools. But Robbie, you'd have had to work the indies for some time, I guess.
When I started on the indies, and I want to say my first match was in 2001. I started training in 2000. I started on the Indies with the Hart Brothers School, which at that time they called it All Canadian Wrestling. And then from there, I got a few shows around we got, me and my tag partner got a few shows around the Ontario circuit. And then we ended up in Michigan, uh, New York, and Boston and all over the place. And it didn't, we were, we were only wrestling matches for about 2.5 years before we got looked at by WWE.
Wow. But in those 2.5 years, I mean, the amount of miles you guys put in is pretty legendary. And that Canadian circuit, I've heard a lot of stories about that. Have you got any nightmare road stories that?
I don't have it. I just know we put a lot of miles in. We drive 10, 12 hours for $30 each, and pick up a couple guys on the way, and we'd pool our money together and come home with nothing. But we didn't pay. We didn't pay for the weekend and stuff. And back then it's pretty hard. And with the business as busy as it is, guys are getting paid a lot more now.
Hmm.
You
But
know.
what sort of motivates you to be in negative equity, like lose money to go and do a show? I mean,
Well, for me, I never did lose money. I never went in the negative. Um, but I looked at it like at that time, there's a lot of people out there that have hobbies and it doesn't do like they just spend money and it brings them joy. But I don't know. I like to do stuff that ends up with money. I don't mean that in a bad way, but um, you know, if you're going to get into something, hopefully it has a payoff because if you go all your life and just keep spending your money, you have nothing in the end.
so there was a definite plan in your head. You'd set yourself a goal, and I guess that goal
I
was
set
to
myself a
win.
goal. Like when I said I was going to be a wrestler, there was no back burner.
Right.
It was, but I had a series of fortunate events happen that kind of all rolled together, and seems like it was meant to be. Um, Unfortunately, I, I was more of a I didn't think of world championships and tag team championships. I thought of party and having fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the side of the road, isn't it? I guess I don't know
Yeah.
how much you want to go into it, but like I I was on another podcast. I cheated on Ben for a night and went on another podcast, and we were talking about when I was producing the cards, and um, one of our issues. I mean, it was a minor issue in comparison to what was actually going on, but when I was working with WWE, it was um it was that period where people were just every month someone was passing away, and that was a real tough time, and and that's part of the road, I guess, isn't it? Like just getting through and doing what you got to do to get through.
You know, I can't help but I had some unfortunate events with WWE, but probably being fired and let go by them was probably a good thing because I could have died on the road by drinking. I drank a lot,
Yeah.
and I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank for I'm coming up on 3 years without drinking. Um, but I know that from from all my from all my work on myself that you know I didn't steer my ship the way I should have, and I partied and carried on, and I understand why it didn't go the way it went, and but in the end, it all turned out good because I have a pretty good life. So
That's good to hear, man.
yeah,
I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but I kind of got reconnected with you um, via my partner. Everyone who listens to the podcast knows I'm sober now myself, and um, uh, I'll give you a plug, man. But Robbie was really kind enough to take time out to do a cameo for me to celebrate my 6 year sober birthday. And he was also kind enough. I don't know if you realise, but you sent 2 versions because you were worried about one of them had messed up.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, but Sharon was really touched by that, and I was really touched because I got a 2 for 1. But you know, yeah, I think it certainly seems like a lot of guys on the road sort of have to look at themselves a little bit, and yeah, I had a taste of it a couple of times doing like a couple of legs of the European tour, and it's hard life, man. It's really hard life, and I guess people maybe think because you're on TV and you're making some money that you should just put up and shut up and get on with it, but it's never really that simple, is it?
No, no, it's not simple. It's not simple. We're supposed to be convincing Ben about wrestling, right?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, ignore that last 5 minutes, Ben. But, so when you got into WWE, I guess you and Rory figured that was it, man. You'd made it, hey?
Yeah, that's it. That was the ultimate goal for me, was to actually just make it to WWE and be on their television once. But once we got there, you taste and you want more. Um, so the journey basically started, and getting signed there, making it like just making it and having Bennett's an action figure, and getting your own action figure. It it that's the big, to me, like, that's the hugest accomplishment in the world. Like, all the money in the world doesn't. I don't know. Like, people say, I don't think of it as the biggest thing in the world, but at the same time, I do, because you know when you tell everybody you're just going to go do something and they laugh at you and then you end up doing it, it's a real good thing. Um, I I just I didn't have the like. There's guys there today, um, or even like, if you look at Edge or Adam Copeland, he's a big star, and he's married to another wrestling star that's in the WWE Hall of Fame. And when I was actually in training with Edge's wife, you know, these people are actually super diehard wrestling fans, more than I am. Like, they have every action figure. They had the lunchbox. I never had all that stuff. I just liked wrestling.
Mm.
I didn't. So I guess I really loved it, and I'm glad I did it. And making it was the biggest thing ever. That's the coolest thing that could ever happen.
And you guys really came in on fire, from what I remember. It was
Well,
a really cool gimmick that's sort of been copied a few times since, I feel. But with the Viking Raiders or whoever those guys were. But at the time, it was really nice because it was sort of going back a little bit to those more character-driven guys from the 90s. With
Well, when Stephanie McMahon saw us, we came in and we were all big bearded, and we wore kilts backstage. Came in like dressed up as, two guys from Scotland. And when they saw us, she just basically said, "We haven't saw this in 15 years.
yeah,
Nobody's come in and shown us anything like this, and we had jobs in 4 days."
wow.
Wow.
Robbie, can you explain a little bit about the psychology of wrestling? And Ben's a big fan of psychology. I mean,
I am, yeah.
Well, if you get a good storyline, the psychology could be amazing, because it could take you on a roller coaster. Like, right now would probably be the best time to watch it, Ben. There's a storyline with CM Punk just returning, and Seth Rollins. They call Seth Rollins a visionary. He's been there for quite some time. And they actually have a real life drama between them.
Beef, I believe they call it.
They call it a beef. And it's going to make for a great story, but now the psychology of it, I would have to explain it as like, I it's hard to explain because it would have to be. I'd have to explain the psychology if we watched a match or something to explain. But like a basic psychology would be okay. So I come out and I get booed, and nobody likes me, and I rap off to everybody. Then I get in the ring. I don't want to rap off to everybody. I might not be that type of character, but then the next guy comes out and they cheer for him, and they're so loud and going crazy for him that so the psychology would be that if that crowd is going so crazy for him, the first thing the first thing that would make them mad is that guy cutting him off. You know, he's got such a great entrance and the crowd's going crazy and he just comes and jumps him and starts beating him up. Now we're ready for a roller coaster because the crowd was so excited for him and now they're so mad because that guy just came and jumped him and did some stuff. And then all of a sudden they'll go through it and then the good guy and you'll feel the crowd. You can actually hear the crowd get excited and get on their seats when their guy is you know starting to make his comeback. Like and then or it might not be his comeback, but he gets a couple things in and then the guy cuts him back off and they all boo him and then maybe he goes to set something up and the good guy gets out of the way so the crowd starts to cheer again and they're hoping they're excited and hoping that he's going to come back now. And then maybe he gets a bunch of stuff in and that guy like cuts him off again real dirty. It's we'd have to watch a match to just explain to
Yeah.
really explain it, I
No,
think.
I think I get what I'm going to ruin what you just said now by comparing it to the hero's journey. It sounds you got the good guy, you got the bad guy, and the bad guy has to suffer. But ultimately, at the end, and maybe this isn't always true, but is like good triumphs over evil. Although that doesn't always happen, does it? Sometimes the
No, it
bad guy
doesn't.
wins.
Well, what happens usually is that's just set up to keep it going for a few more matches.
Yeah, yeah.
Because usually in the end the good guy always wins. Even though it might not be at that pay-per-view, it might be two pay-per-views down the road. 2 months later he could ultimately get his revenge and then you know
Is there anyone? Was there anyone in that was kind of not undefeated, but like almost never lost? The Undertaker.
the Undertaker had a WrestleMania streak that he
Hmm.
never lost. I want to say he never lost. I don't know if
Right.
he lost. Did he lose the very last time? I can't remember.
Rich
No,
probably
he
knows.
came back and had a couple of wins after, but he lost to Brock, didn't he? And I
At
don't know.
WrestleMania.
Yeah. I
Okay.
don't. Ben, do you know who Brock Lesnar is?
Yeah, yeah, because he went into MMA afterwards, and
Yes.
Yeah,
I
he,
follow MMA or UFC. So.
he's basically the only uh, guy believable enough to probably end the Undertaker's streak. 'Cause the
Yeah.
Undertaker had built up this mystique over sort of 21 years of doing what he was doing, and so they had to have uh, a monster that was big enough to be able to take that away from him. In terms of like you're talking about undefeated stuff, like back in the day, guys used to hold the belt for 4 or 5 years. Bruno Sammartino, he was a guy in the 80s, and he sort of kept it all quite legit. He was he practiced kayfabe, I guess you'd say, wouldn't
Yeah.
you? And so there were guys who appeared on the surface of it then to be, well, they were legitimate. I've got to be careful what I'm saying, Derek or Robbie, because like, I don't want to piss you off because I know you guys are all legitimate athletes, but so some of the terminology, you know, is it can be a bit sensitive, can't it? Like we don't
Um,
use it.
it to me now, I'm not so sensitive to it, but there's a lot of guys that are very sensitive. Um,
Yeah,
I'm at a point in my life that you know the Vince McMahon told everybody it was a story and it was a show, and that kind of, that opened the world up. And to me now, where if I'm sure if I would have grew up in a certain era, I would have been a little bit like when I started out. We practiced kayfabe and we stayed away from each other, and we did what we were supposed to do. But it got like, even when we got to WWE, we started traveling with guys we were working with.
Really?
And we shouldn't have been doing that. But other people were too.
I guess, like you've said, the internet had a lot to do with that, and that changed it. You don't seem like the biggest fan of that coming on.
Well, I think it just ruins wrestling, because I don't know, like, all these people want to talk bad about it. If they wanted to, if they wanted to make a change, go make it, get in and change it. Do it real instead of talking from behind a keyboard, and you know what I mean? There's just so much negativity towards, like, wrestling. Like, don't if it bothers you that much that you don't like this, don't watch it. Just, you know what I mean? Get out of watching the business. Why ruin it you ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah.
I just find.
Sorry, I've got to ask. I've been holding on to this for a while, but what does kayfabe mean?
Oh, basically, there's. It's hard. It's another one hard to explain. It's just basically, if you're in a storyline, if you're a bad guy, don't be seen with a good guy. Keep everything.
Okay.
Keep everything under wraps. Don't spill the beans. Don't let the finish out. It's basically keep it as real as possible.
Okay. I think I've got an example of this, because in the documentary that I was watching about Vince Vaughn, Vince Vaughn. I did that last time we were talking about him. Vince McMahon. He rang the bell on the last match with Hart, right? Bret Hart.
Yeah, he told him to get it done.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So is that an example of breaking? Hang on, what's that word again? Kayfabe. Yeah, thanks, guys. Is that an example of breaking through kayfabe?
Well, actually, I don't know if that's an example of breaking kayfabe, because that was a straight up screw job. Brett was. I don't know the whole story because I wasn't there, or you can watch it and read between the lines. But supposedly Brett was told that he wasn't going to lose, and then they basically changed it all in the ring on him, and they didn't get the match off they wanted to do, and so no, breaking kayfabe would be more like, okay, so. Breaking kayfabe, like
there was your buddy Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik. They were probably the most famous case of
that's breaking kayfabe.
Yeah, so Ben, Jim Duggan was like this all-American
right?
hero. Yeah,
yes, sir.
Jim Duggan, and he got caught with his nemesis, the Iron Sheik, who was a Iranian character, and they got caught in a car together, and they got caught with some stuff they shouldn't have had in a car together.
Yeah.
And this was like just before Vince had like exposed the business, if you like, as a performance, and it was all over the newspapers and stuff. And what annoys me, and I think possibly you as well a little bit, Robbie, with the internet and stuff, and because I was working on the stickers and stuff as the internet wrestling community was being born, and the amount of people that take great pleasure in saying, I told you it was fake. I try not to use the F word, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the amount of people, they love going, oh, no, there's no way that guy really did that, or whatever.
Well, the whole mystique about wrestling is, if it's presented well, you can get so sucked into it and believe, even though it's not real.
Mm.
And
And
that's
that they talk about suspension of disbelief. I think the first time I heard that was probably in one of Mick Foley's book. He talks about that, and it's the same as going to see a movie. We know that.
exactly. That's and for Ben, that's the best way I think we could describe it for you is like when you go watch a movie, like we all go watch movies, but we know we're not going to watch something that's real, or unless it's based on a true story, it's not usually as far fetched as the movies we're watching that are
Mm.
crazier.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. Honestly, I think that I would have continued with wrestling if I hadn't discovered girls, but uh, I got distracted in my late teens. It wasn't
Ben,
on Space
Ben, I
Jam.
have to say, the same thing. High school was girls and maybe some alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. Rich survived though. He's very loyal. He's very loyal.
No, I still did the
I
girls
came
and the
back to I
alcohol.
came back to it. That's how I ended up in
I think
it.
I was a little bit like that, man. Like when in the mid-90s when I was at school and stuff. Um, I think it was pretty poor wrestling anyway. It was like a lot of like really hokey characters, and
Yes, it was.
then I met a guy in the pub, surprisingly, and he was like, "Oh, stay tonight. We're watching WrestleMania was on, and they like and over here it's like 2 a.m, that it starts.
Yeah.
So we just had like a lock in and got hammered and watched WrestleMania for a few hours, and then he was really into it and used to trade tapes and that sort of thing, and just through hanging out with him I sort of got back into it a little bit in that um, Monday Night Wars period where the storylines were the most gripping thing.
That's where it got good, was the Monday Night Wars, and ECW was thrown in the mix a little, and that's where. But then it was a little more edgier too for our age. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't as 80s, and it wasn't as hokey as some of the 90s, but it got very edgy and pretty much R rated in some spots.
Yeah.
So it did get exciting that way.
And I think that sense of reality TV was like a new thing, wasn't it? And Big Brother, and I don't know what you guys have in the States,
And
Real
that's when
World or whatever.
they started pushing the envelope because of all this reality TV.
Yeah. And that sense of reality kind of added to the suspension of disbelief, I think.
Yes.
Then there were guys walking out of one company on a Sunday and showing up on the next the new company on the Monday, and that was like unheard of. And then that sort of carried on, and I think at some point Vince must have accepted that reality was the way to go, and he came out with like there was a American Idol, Ben.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
like an American Idol for WWE called Tough Enough that um uh it was like a tryout show, and some really good guys came out of that, and reality's sort of continued ever since then, I think. I mean, even when you were around, hey Robbie, there was a
There
lot of
was there was some tough enoughs, and then yeah, there was a few tough enoughs when I was
mm.
around.
And do you mind talking a little bit about what led to you leaving WE, because that was a reality TV moment, as from what I remember.
So everybody always talks about the TNA incident, and
Yeah,
when I was showed on someone else's television while I was under contract with WWE. Um, I know some people might tell the story different, but I know it really happened over my time in WWE. Um, I didn't I didn't pitch angles. I didn't steer my ship, and So like I can't. At one time, I used to lay a little blame on Rory, and really, I can't blame him because I never steered my ship too. You know, I didn't tell him to do what he should have been doing, and he wasn't telling me what I was should have been doing. So, in the end, you know, not giving him ideas, and it caused our demise and our dislike for being at WWE. And at the same time, I like to party and carry on and have a lot of fun. And when they stopped using us, they were starting to beat us up every week on television on all the shows. So you pretty much know when you're getting beat up every week that it's time to go. And it just happened to be that was early January. My tag team partner got injured. He ended up sitting on the shelf. I figured we were going to get let go after WrestleMania anyhow, but I ended up going to TVs every week. And then I just didn't care anymore. And I did some stupid things. And, you do some stupid things when when you drink all the time and not use your brain. It did cause. The only thing I think it really did cause was I was never looked at by WWE again, which that's the worst part of the side of the coin. But in the end, I don't need them, and I got to, like I say earlier, I'm pretty much 50 years old, and I'm not retired, but I could pretty much retire.
Yeah.
So, like, I do jobs, make some money here and there, but I I own a house without a mortgage. I own a car without a payment. I I have a bank full of money. My life's turned out really good, and any of the stuff I have accumulated now is not from wrestling. It's from something totally different.
Yeah.
So it, WWE, like when I was in WWE, they're giving out big money now. We weren't making money in my time. The most I made was $150,000 in WWE, and you had to pay all your own expenses.
Wow.
So, rental cars every week, all your meals, all your hotels. So it wasn't it it wasn't millions of dollars. Like there was guys that make millions of dollars, like John Cena and that, but the guys that I don't know what the guys starting out are making now, but there was not a lot of money back then.
It's kind of hard to believe when you see people in the ring in front of these huge crowds, and like the reception that you get when you come in and everything, that you're having to foot your own bills. That's crazy.
Yep. Well, basically, you get paid on your position on the card, and then if the guy in the main event's getting big money and the guy at the bottom's getting you know some people. Well, I don't know about now, but then you could get $500 to be for there for. So if you did 4 shows in a weekend, you could make $2,000. Now pay all your bills.
Hmm.
It wasn't it they and it's funny because in our time they were saying, "Oh, you guys are like NBA. You're like this and that." If we were NBA, I would have retired years ago. Because NBA's they're making bank,
Yeah.
and when I started in wrestling, they weren't making anything. There was guys in Florida making 400, or in Florida and Ohio Valley wrestling making $400 a week.
Yeah.
Live off that.
Yeah. That seems desperately unfair, considering what you guys put yourselves through. And one of the big controversies, Ben, is wrestling has never had a union, or any sort of governing body looking after it. So when Vince was the only show going, I think Bret Hart, said they were treated like cattle, or and because there was nowhere else to work. But yeah, I think times have changed a little bit now, which is better for the business, I guess.
There's a kid that just got signed for AEW. He's an internet sensation. Yeah, he's been on TNA and some other things. They just signed him for 7 figures.
Wow. Yeah.
Like 7 figures.
Yeah.
And WWE said, no, no, thanks. They didn't want to pay that much for him, I think.
Yeah.
So it just, well, I think they just gave 7 figures to CM Punk. So that might be why they didn't sign the other guy.
Yeah. Listen, I know like you're still pretty active, Robbie. And
Yep.
but there was that film a few years ago now, the wrestler, the Darren Aronofsky movie. Did you ever see that? The one with God, what's his name? He was at Mania with Jericho. And
oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. What's his name? Mickey
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke. Yeah. And a lot of people sort of feel it's a bit like that for guys who aren't on one of the big shows anymore, but you seem to be an exception to that rule, definitely.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people, when like I ended up in a sales career where I still wrestled a little, but now I don't even do sales. I just do some wrestling and do some other little things. I fix up a house, I'll sell it, make money there. But I used to get called, oh, there's the wrestler. And at one time it actually irritated me because I wasn't living in my van. I wasn't working for $20 somewhere and, hoping to come up with some money for some steroids. I really am I'm one of the exceptions because, maybe because wrestling wasn't the full dream of my life. It was a big dream. It was a big part of and the dream of my life. But when you got your back to the wall, you can get yourself in situations where you're in survival mode, and you'll figure other things out. And I just didn't want to end up living in a van and doing all that. I wanted way more. And now I got what I need. And what I really needed was happiness, and I pretty much have it. Get a little bit lonely because I have no woman in my life, but it's
I talked to Ben about that, man. That's all Ben ever talks about on this podcast. Just
Ben, one of my dreams. So, I'm a dreamer, and I like to follow my dreams. I taught myself how to play guitar. I can sing again. Someone must have told me I sucked as a singer as a kid, and I never did it for years. And I'm quite amazing at it. I don't mean to blow my own horn, but I'm a really good singer. I'm not that great at guitar, but I taught myself how to make my own songs with a guitar. But one of my dreams is it would have been nice to have that high school romance and have that girl for your whole life.
Yeah.
And if I can't have it in high school, it'd be all right to have it at 50 and for the rest of your life.
Well, not with a high school girl though, because you get.
No, definitely not. I've seen so many people go back since Facebook's been introduced to people they went out with in high school. It never worked then. It's not going to work now.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ben basically uses this platform as a way to try and get women to talk to him.
This is my fishing pool. I'm just.
We generally only have one viewer, so
and she's not interested. So.
Oh man, it sounds like you're doing so well, mate. And we've touched on having to make some changes in your life, and that's really cool. You've done that as well, man. Is there anything you want to plug? Have you got anything coming up?
I don't have much going on right now because it's wintertime. But I've been doing a lot of working out and spending time in the gym, starting to feel a little bit better. I was working on a house. I bought a house that I'm working on. I'm going to sell because that's one hell of a way to make money here in Canada. because you don't pay tax. You don't pay taxes if you own the house for a year, and so if you can make a lot of money that way, it's a great way to make money. But I think I don't know. I've been actually thinking about hopefully popping up and wrestling again somewhere, and just it'd be nice to actually get a conversation with Triple H, or Shawn Michaels, and just maybe show up in the business somewhere again. As a teacher, a trainer, or maybe character development. But it's not at the forefront like a dream. But I think if I stay in shape and take care of my body, that I could probably, if I could just get myself on television once or twice, I could go back and have another 3 or 4 year run on the Indies and just call it a day after that. And because I've had a good run on the Indies over here in Nova Scotia over the last couple of years, and
I've seen, man. You're like a belt collector over there, bro.
well, the thing is, where I live, it's so old school that it's kind of lucrative. That's why I do it. Like there's nights you can make $1,500 out here.
Wow.
So it's you get a five show tour out here, and it's a pretty good week.
Yeah. Man, it's been so great talking to you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Ben, have you got anything?
I don't know if we talked Ben into wrestling though.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I'm convinced. I'm going to check out some of these new guys and see what the scene's like nowadays. But to be perfectly honest, I still hold that nostalgia for the good old days in the 90s. I don't know if it will ever affect me the way that it did back then. I do have one question. What was your signature move? Because I think I looked it up earlier and it was something like the tartan tea bag or something. I saw an image of you sitting on a guy's face. What was?
Okay, that was for fun, but I like to call my finishing move the Highland Hammer, which is kind of a version of a pedigree that Triple H does. But our tag team was called the Hot Scott Slingshot, and basically it was a double reverse suplex where you bounce him off the top rope and basically gave him a diamond cutter when he went around like a circus ride.
Wow, man!
I'm going to go down a YouTube rabbit hole later on, I think.
You could probably find it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing, isn't it? All you guys who like maybe didn't get the longevity of a career, like we can watch you now, like on YouTube or on that $9.99 network deal or whatever. That's something I wanted to ask. Sorry, just one quick question. So when I was doing the trading cards, like I did you and your Rory on as a trading card, and we used to have to send in like a whole spreadsheet of the images that we'd used, and I always assumed it was for royalties. Like now that you're on the network, I guess, do you still get like a check or anything like that?
I've not seen money from WWE for I don't know how long.
Man,
They'll send like the 1099 for taxes to my house, to my mom's house with zeros in it.
Wow.
So I and to be honest, that if we're on the network, we should be getting something.
Yeah.
So I believe there is going to be. I'm like I say, I'm in a good spot, and I couldn't care less. It's peanuts for the money they give you. But I believe that there's a bunch of guys that are pretty hot about it, and there'll probably be a class action suit one day, maybe. I don't know. Just because, you're being shown on television, and so you should be receiving something for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed, man. Agreed.
People, I don't know how many subscribers, but if you even put 1 million at $9.99 a month, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe one day they'll sort it out. And they've just been taken over, and
Well, that's it. that's where the guys will probably maybe start going after it because it's not Vince anymore. They're like, well, we can go
Yeah.
try and get all this money now.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I think it's only what you deserve, bro. And uh, yeah, it's been amazing catching up and chatting with you. I think we've turned Ben a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm back in. I'm back in the game. Yeah, for sure.
But it is too bad they didn't have a few more characters, kind of like the nostalgic years, because that's what wrestling is, man. Like
Mm.
there's, they're just they need a few characters. Like John Cena was even a character,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
More kayfabe.
Yeah, well, that'd be nice too. Get rid of the internet,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's happening.
Not anytime soon, man.
Not at all. Not at all.
I've got, I'm out of questions, bro. It's been amazing.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, it's lovely talking with you. Lovely listening to your stories of the glory days, and it's good to hear that everything's going well for you now. So
Thank you very much. The glory days are right now, actually.
yeah.
So
Good for you, man. Good for
there'll be a little more glory days when I find that girl. Well, actually, I'm not going to find her. I'm just going to bump into her one day.
If
you're looking, you never find.
If we get any emails, we'll send them your way for sure.
Okay, perfect.
All right, Ben, you're going to take us out, bro.
All right, yeah, I will go into the outro. So thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll hear good news from your ends pretty soon. All right, take care, guys.
Good
Thank you
show,
very much.
buddy. Love you. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
Take care.